The medical bay doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Dr. Keith Warren stepped inside. The room was darker than usual. Someone had dimmed the lights to almost nothing. In the center of the space, on a floating medical bed, lay a figure wrapped entirely in deep purple cloth. The fabric covered every inch of the body, leaving only a small gap for the eyes. Warren had been a field doctor for 12 years. He had treated injuries from dozens of different species across the galaxy. But he had never been called to treat a Crothan before. The Crothan kept to themselves. They rarely asked for help from outsiders. "Dr. Warren," a tall figure said from the corner. Ambassador Doran stepped forward. His skin had a slight blue tint under the dim lights. His face was smooth and perfect, without a single mark or blemish. "Thank you for coming." Warren nodded. "What seems to be the problem?" "Delegate Velira has fallen ill," Doran said. His voice was cold and formal. "She collapsed during the negotiation session this morning. Our medical staff attempted to examine her, but she refused their assistance." "Why would she refuse medical help?" Warren asked. Doran's jaw tightened. "That is not your concern. Your job is simply to stabilize her condition. Nothing more." Warren walked closer to the medical bed. He could hear shallow breathing coming from beneath the wrappings. "I need to examine her properly. That means I need to see what's wrong." "No," a weak voice said from the bed. It was feminine and strained with pain. "No examination." "Velira, please," Doran said sharply. "This human is here to help. You must cooperate." I said no. The voice was firmer now despite the weakness. Warren pulled up a chair and sat down beside the bed. He kept his distance, not wanting to crowd her. "My name is Keith. I'm not here to hurt you or judge you. I just want to help." The wrapped figure turned slightly toward him. Through the small gap in the fabric, Warren could see a pair of golden eyes watching him. They were filled with fear and something else. Shame, perhaps. "You cannot help me," Velira whispered. "Why not?" "Because I am already dead. I have been dead for 5 years. I just forgot to stop breathing." Warren frowned. "That doesn't make sense. You're clearly alive." "Not to my people." Velira coughed, and Warren heard her gasp in pain. "To them I am nothing. I should not exist." Doran shifted uncomfortably in the corner. "Delegate Velira, you are speaking inappropriately." "Let her speak," Warren said firmly. He looked back at Velira. "What happened 5 years ago?" There was a long silence. Then Velira spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "There was an accident. A reactor breach on a military vessel. I was the engineering commander. My crew was trapped in the lower decks." "What did you do?" "What any commander would do. I went in to get them out. The radiation shielding had failed. The heat was incredible. But I pulled them out one by one. All 17 of them. They all survived." Warren leaned forward slightly. "That sounds incredibly brave." "Brave?" Velira laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "No, doctor. It was foolish. Because when I crawled out of that reactor room, I was no longer perfect. And among the Crothan, if you are not perfect, you are nothing." "I don't understand," Warren said. "Our culture values physical perfection above all else," Doran explained reluctantly. "Any visible scarring or disfigurement is considered a sign of weakness. Those who bear such marks are no longer considered full citizens." Warren felt his stomach turn. "You exile people for getting injured?" "It is our way," Doran said stiffly. "It has been our way for thousands of years." Warren looked back at Velira. "So what happened after the accident?" "I was given a choice," Velira said quietly. "I could take the honorable path and end my life. Or I could live in concealment. I chose to hide. I was a coward." "No," Warren said firmly. "Choosing to live is never cowardice." "You do not understand our culture, human," Doran said. "Maybe not," Warren replied. "But I understand medicine. And right now Velira needs treatment. I can hear that her breathing is labored. She's running a fever. If I had to guess, there's an infection somewhere." Velira coughed again, harder this time. When she spoke, her voice was weaker. "The wounds never healed properly. The doctors refused to treat them fully. They said I was not worth the resources. Over the years the tissue has degraded. Now there is infection. I can feel it spreading." "Then let me help you," Warren said gently. "I cannot," Velira whispered. "If I reveal myself, if anyone sees what I truly am, I will be officially exiled. I will lose my position. I will lose everything." "You'll lose your life if you don't get treatment," Warren said. "Perhaps that would be better." Warren sat back in his chair. He had dealt with stubborn patients before, but this was different. This wasn't just about medical treatment. This was about an entire culture that had taught this woman to be ashamed of surviving. "Can I tell you something?" Warren asked softly. Velira's golden eyes watched him through the gap in the cloth. She didn't respond, but she didn't refuse either. Warren stood up and turned his back to her. Slowly he removed his medical jacket. Then he pulled off his shirt. His back and sides were covered in burn scars. The tissue was twisted and discolored, running from his right shoulder down to his waist. He heard Velira gasp softly. "Shuttle crash," Warren explained. 6 years ago. The fuel cells ruptured and caught fire. I was trapped in the pilot's seat for almost 20 minutes before rescue arrived. The burns covered 40% of my body. He turned back around, putting his shirt back on. "Among humans, we don't hide our scars. We wear them. Because they're proof that we survived something that should have killed us. They're proof that we're strong enough to keep going." Velira was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her voice was trembling. "You do not understand. Among my people, these marks are shame. They are proof of impurity. Of weakness." "Then your people are wrong," Warren said simply. "Dr. Warren," Doran said sharply. "You overstep." "Do I?" Warren looked at the ambassador. "She's dying. And you're more concerned about your cultural taboos than saving her life. Tell me, ambassador, which is the real weakness here?" Doran's face hardened, but he said nothing. Warren turned back to Velira. "I can't force you to accept treatment. That's your choice. But I want you to know something. If you choose to let me help you, I will do everything in my power to save your life. And I will not judge you for what I see. That's a promise." Velira's breathing was becoming more ragged. Warren could see her body shaking beneath the wrappings. She was running out of time. "I'm not clean," she whispered, and her voice broke on the words. "I'm not clean, doctor. I'm marked. I'm ruined. Her words cut off as her body convulsed. Alarms began to sound from the medical equipment. Her breathing became a wet, rattling sound. "She's going into shock," Warren said, moving quickly. "I need to stabilize her now or she's going to die." "No," Velira gasped. "Please, don't look." But her eyes were rolling back. Her body was shutting down. Warren grabbed his medical scanner and began emergency protocols. He had seconds to make a decision. Respect her wishes and watch her die, or save her life and expose the secret she had guarded for 5 years. He made his choice. Warren's hands moved with practiced speed as the alarms continued to blare. He reached for the edge of Velira's wrappings, but her hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Even in her weakened state, her grip was strong. "Please," she gasped. "Not with them here. Not with witnesses." Warren looked over his shoulder at Ambassador Doran and the 2 Crothan guards standing by the door. He made a decision quickly. "Everyone out," Warren said firmly. Doran stepped forward. "That is not acceptable. We must observe the treatment to ensure proper protocols are followed." "I don't care what you find acceptable," Warren said. His voice was sharp now. "This is a medical emergency. My patient has requested privacy. You will respect that request or I walk out of here right now and let her die. Your choice." Doran's face showed clear anger, but he saw the determination in Warren's eyes. After a long moment he nodded stiffly. "Very well. But this is highly irregular." "Noted," Warren said. "Now get out." The ambassador and guards left the room. The doors slid shut behind them. Warren turned back to Velira. Her breathing was still labored, but the immediate crisis had passed. "For now." "They're gone," Warren said gently. "It's just you and me." Velira's golden eyes looked up at him. Tears were forming at the corners. "You do not know what you are asking me to do." "I know exactly what I'm asking," Warren said. He pulled his chair closer and sat down. "I'm asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me save your life." "Why?" Velira whispered. "Why does it matter to you? I am nothing. I am no one. I am just another broken thing that should have been discarded years ago." Warren felt anger rising in his chest. Not at her, but at the society that had taught her to think this way. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Do you want to know why I became a doctor?" he asked. Velira didn't respond, but she was listening. "When I was in that burning shuttle, trapped in the pilot's seat, I thought I was going to die. The pain was beyond anything I'd ever experienced. I could smell my own flesh burning. I passed out twice. But then someone came through the fire. A rescue medic named Sarah. She pulled me out. She kept me alive long enough to get to a medical bay." Warren paused, remembering. Later, when I was recovering, I asked her why she risked her life for me. She said something I've never forgotten. She said that every life has value. Every single one. And that her job was to prove that to people who had forgotten. He looked directly into Velira's eyes. You've forgotten your value. Your society has taught you that you're worthless because you got hurt saving your crew. But I'm here to remind you of something important. You are valuable. Your life matters. And I will not let you die because of someone else's twisted definition of perfection. Velira's tears spilled over now, running down to the cloth that covered her face. Her whole body was shaking. I am afraid, she whispered. I know, Warren said softly. But I promise you I have seen worse. And more importantly, I promise that I will not judge you for what I see. You saved 17 lives. That makes you a hero in my book. Slowly, with trembling hands, Velira reached up to the edge of her wrappings. She hesitated for a long moment. Then, inch by inch, she began to unwrap the cloth from her face. Warren kept his expression neutral as the fabric fell away. He had seen many injuries in his career, but he understood the weight of this moment. This was about more than just medical examination. This was about trust. The first thing he noticed was that half of her face was smooth and unblemished, the typical pale blue skin of the Crothan species. But the other half was covered in thick, twisted scar tissue. The burns had melted the skin, leaving it puckered and discolored. Her right eye was partially obscured by the scarring, though it still seemed functional. Keep going, Warren said encouragingly. You're doing great. Velira continued unwrapping the cloth from her neck and shoulders. More scars appeared. These were deeper, angrier. Chemical burns mixed with what looked like thermal damage. The tissue was inflamed and weeping in several places. Warren could see the clear signs of infection. When she unwrapped her arms, Warren had to consciously control his reaction. The scarring extended all the way down to her hands. But worse than the scars themselves was the obvious lack of proper medical care. The tissue had been allowed to heal badly. In some places, the scar tissue had contracted, limiting her range of motion. The reactor coolant was a corrosive compound, Velira explained quietly. When the containment failed, it sprayed everywhere. The heat made it worse. It ate through my protective suit in seconds. Warren pulled out his medical scanner and began running it over her body. The readings made his stomach sink. How long have you had this infection? Weeks, Velira admitted. Maybe longer. It started as a small irritation in one of the old wound sites. But it spread. The scanner beeped, displaying the full scope of the problem. Warren's jaw tightened. The infection had spread through her lymphatic system. It was in her blood now, approaching major organs. Why didn't you seek treatment sooner? He asked, though he already knew the answer. I did, Velira said bitterly. 3 weeks ago, I went to a Crothan medical facility. I waited until late at night when few people would see me. The doctor examined me for less than 5 minutes. Then he told me that my condition was the result of improper initial treatment. He said that fixing it would require extensive resources and multiple procedures. And? Warren prompted. And he said that such resources could not be justified for someone of my status. He gave me some basic antibiotics and sent me away. He told me that if the infection became life-threatening, I should contact my family to make final arrangements. Warren's hands clenched around the scanner. He told you to go home and die. Yes, Velira said simply. Because that is what I should have done 5 years ago. I should have taken the honorable path. Instead, I have lived in shame, hiding behind these wrappings, speaking through intermediaries. I have been a ghost in my own life. Warren set down the scanner and looked at her directly. Let me be very clear about something. What happened to you is not your fault. The way your doctors treated you is not medicine. It's cruelty. And I will not let it continue. What can you do? Velira asked. You are one human doctor. You cannot change the Crothan way. Maybe not, Warren agreed. But I can save you. If you let me. Velira looked down at her scarred hands. And then what? Even if you cure the infection, I will still be marked. I will still be impure. Nothing changes. Everything changes, Warren said firmly. Because you'll be alive. And while you're alive, you have choices. You can keep hiding or you can choose something different. But first you have to survive. Will you let me help you? Velira was quiet for a long moment. Warren could see her mind working, weighing her options. Finally, she looked up at him. What do you need me to do? Warren felt relief wash over him. First, I need to run a complete scan. Then I need to start aggressive treatment for the infection. But I have to be honest with you. The infection has spread far. The treatment I can provide here in this medical bay may not be enough. What are you saying? I'm saying that you may need to be transferred to a human medical facility. We have more advanced equipment for dealing with this kind of systemic infection. But that would mean more people seeing you. More witnesses. Velira closed her eyes. If I do this, if I let you transfer me, Ambassador Doran will report it to the Crothan Council. They will know that I exposed myself to aliens. They will exile me officially. Yes, Warren said honestly. They probably will. Then I will have nothing, Velira said. Warren leaned forward. No. Then you will have your life. And sometimes that's enough to start over. Warren stood in the corridor outside the medical bay, his communication device pressed to his ear. On the other end of the line was Captain Lisa Grant, commander of the human medical vessel Sanctuary that was docked 3 stations away. I need a full medical transfer, Warren said urgently. Critical patient with systemic infection. She needs your level 3 treatment facilities. What species? Grant asked. Crothan. There was a pause. Keith, you know the Crothan don't accept outside medical care. This could cause a diplomatic incident. It already is an incident, Warren replied. But if we don't act now, she dies. I'm invoking emergency medical protocols. This patient has requested transfer and I'm authorizing it. Another pause. Then Grant sighed. All right. I'll prep a medical team. But you're going to have to explain this to Ambassador Doran. Already working on it, Warren said, though his stomach tightened at the thought. He ended the call and walked back into the medical bay. Velira was resting on the bed, still partially wrapped in her cloths, but her face and arms were exposed now. She looked exhausted. I'm arranging your transfer, Warren said. But we need a cover story. Something that won't immediately trigger an investigation. What do you suggest? Velira asked weakly. Warren thought for a moment. We tell them you've contracted an unknown pathogen. Something potentially dangerous to other species. We're putting you in quarantine protocols for everyone's safety. Technically, it's not a lie. We don't know exactly what strain of bacteria is causing your infection. Velira managed a small smile. You are clever, Doctor. I've had practice, Warren said. 20 minutes later, Ambassador Doran stood in the corridor, his face tight with displeasure. This is highly irregular. This is a medical emergency, Warren countered. Your delegate has an aggressive infection that could potentially spread to other species. Protocol requires immediate quarantine and specialized treatment. The Crothan have advanced medical facilities, Doran said stiffly. Not on this station you don't, Warren replied. The nearest Crothan medical vessel is 4 days away. She doesn't have 4 days. The human ship Sanctuary has the facilities she needs and can receive her within 2 hours. Doran's jaw clenched. And you will be treating her personally? I'll be overseeing her care, yes. The ambassador studied Warren's face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Very well. But I expect regular updates on her condition. And Dr. Warren, if anything happens to Delegate Velira while in human care, there will be consequences. Understood, Warren said. 3 hours later, Velira was lying in a pristine medical room aboard the Sanctuary. The room was larger and brighter than the station's medical bay. Through the window, she could see stars streaming past as the ship maintained its orbit. Warren entered with 2 other doctors. A woman with gray hair and sharp eyes and a younger man with a kind face. Velira, this is Dr. Susan Hayes, our Chief of Regenerative Medicine. And this is Dr. Tom Fisher, our infection specialist. Hayes approached the bed with a warm smile. Hello, Velira. Dr. Warren has briefed us on your situation. I want you to know that everything we do here is confidential. We're here to help, not to judge. Fisher pulled up a chair. I've reviewed your scans. I'm not going to lie to you. This infection is serious. It's spread through your lymphatic system and we're seeing early signs of organ involvement. But we've dealt with cases like this before. You're in good hands. Over the next 6 hours, the medical team worked methodically. They started aggressive antibiotic treatments, targeting the specific bacteria strains they'd identified. They used advanced filtration to clean Velira's blood. They carefully debrided the infected tissue, removing the damaged areas while preserving as much healthy tissue as possible. Velira remained conscious through most of it. The human doctors talked to her throughout the procedures, explaining what they were doing and why. It was strange for her. Crothan doctors worked in silence, treating patients as objects to be repaired rather than people to be cared for. Why do you explain everything? Velira asked Hayes at one point. Hayes looked up from her work. Because it's your body. You have a right to know what's happening to it. Plus, understanding the process can help reduce anxiety. Crothan doctors do not do this, Velira said quietly. Well, Hayes said with a gentle smile, we're not Crothan doctors. 3 days passed. The infection began to respond to treatment. The inflammation reduced. The fever broke. Velira's body started to heal properly for the first time in years. On the 4th day, Warren sat beside her bed with a tablet in his hands. We need to talk about the next phase of treatment. Velira nodded. She was sitting up now, looking stronger than she had in weeks. The infection is under control, Warren continued. But we need to address the underlying tissue damage. The scar tissue is contracted in several places. It's limiting your mobility and creating pockets where infection can recur. We can fix that. How? Velira asked. Regenerative therapy, Warren said. We can rebuild the damaged tissue. Make it functional again. Reduce the pain and the risk of future infection. You mean make the scars disappear? Velira said flatly. Warren shook his head. No. I mean make them stable. There's a difference. He put down the tablet and leaned forward. Here's the thing, Velira. We could erase your scars completely. The technology exists. But Dr. Hayes and I had a long conversation about this. And we both agreed that we shouldn't do that without asking you first. Velira frowned. I do not understand. Why would you not remove them? Isn't that the goal of treatment? The goal of treatment is to make you healthy and functional, Warren said. Not to erase your history. These scars are part of your story. They're proof of what you survived. What you sacrificed to save your crew. Erasing them completely would be like saying that story doesn't matter. Velira stared at him. But among my people, these scars are shame. Among your people, yes, Warren agreed. But you don't have to accept their definition. You can choose your own. I do not know if I can do that, Velira whispered. You don't have to decide right now, Warren said gently. We'll stabilize the tissue regardless. Make it healthy and pain-free. The cosmetic aspect can wait. You have time to think about who you want to be. Over the following week, as the treatments continued, Velira began to talk more. She told Warren and the other doctors about her life before the accident. I was a ship commander, she said one afternoon while Hayes worked on treating the tissue on her arm. One of the youngest in the Crothan fleet. I had 17 successful missions. I was being considered for promotion to fleet coordinator. That's impressive, Hayes said. After the accident, all of that disappeared, Velira continued. Her voice was bitter. My name was removed from official records. My commendations were erased. It was as if I had never existed. My family held a memorial service as if I had died. They told everyone I had perished in the reactor breach. Warren looked up sharply. They held a funeral for you while you were still alive? Yes, Velira said. It was easier than admitting their daughter was marked. Impure. They sent me a message afterward. It said that I had brought dishonor to the family name and that I should do the right thing. They meant I should kill myself. That's horrible, Fisher said quietly. It is our way, Velira said, though her voice cracked slightly. Then your way is wrong, Hayes said firmly. She had stopped her work and was looking directly at Velira. I'm sorry to be blunt, but any culture that throws away its heroes because they got injured saving lives is fundamentally broken. Velira was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I used to think that too. In the beginning I was angry. I thought it was unfair. But over the years I started to believe what they told me. That I was worthless. That I deserved to be hidden away. And now? Warren asked. Velira looked down at her scarred hands. Now I do not know what to believe anymore. You humans treat me like I matter. Like my life has value. It confuses me. It shouldn't confuse you, Warren said. It should make you angry that anyone ever made you feel otherwise. 2 weeks had passed since Velira's transfer to the sanctuary. Her body had healed remarkably well. The infection was gone. The scar tissue had been stabilized and no longer caused her pain. She could move her arms freely again without the pulling sensation she had lived with for years. But the peace negotiations back at the station had fallen apart. Warren sat in Velira's room, reviewing the latest reports on his tablet. The Crothan delegation walked out of talks yesterday. Without your strategic guidance, they're making demands that the other species can't possibly accept. If this continues, we're looking at potential conflict. Velira stared out the window at the stars. They have other advisors. They do not need me. The reports say otherwise, Warren countered. You were their lead strategist. No one else has your insight into multi-species negotiations. Ambassador Doran has sent 3 requests asking when you'll be cleared to return. I cannot return, Velira said quietly. You know that. The moment I step back into that station, I will be expected to wrap myself again. To hide. To pretend I do not exist. I cannot do that anymore. Not after living here where people see me as a person. Warren set down his tablet. Then don't hide. Velira turned to look at him. What? Don't hide, Warren repeated. Go back to the negotiations. But this time go as yourself. No wrappings. No concealment. Let them see you. Velira's eyes widened. That would be exile. Official exile. They would strip me of my position immediately. I would lose everything. You've already lost everything, Warren said gently. They took it from you 5 years ago. The only thing you've been holding on to is the illusion that you still have a place in their society. But you don't. Not as long as you have to hide who you are. You make it sound simple, Velira said, her voice shaking. But you do not understand what you are asking. To appear before the council uncovered would be the greatest shame. It would be admitting that I am impure. Unworthy. Warren stood up and walked over to her. Or it would be admitting that their definition of worth is garbage. Velira, you saved 17 lives. You're one of the best strategic minds in the Crothan Empire. You've dedicated your life to serving your people even after they rejected you. If that's not worthy, then I don't know what is. The council will reject me, Velira said. Maybe, Warren agreed. But maybe something else will happen. Maybe it's time the galaxy saw the truth about what the Crothan Empire really is. Velira was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice barely audible. I am afraid. I know, Warren said. But I'll be there with you. The entire human delegation will support you. You won't be alone. 3 days later, Velira stood in the docking bay of the council station. She wore simple clothing, no ceremonial wrappings. Her scarred face and arms were completely visible. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Warren stood beside her. Behind them were Captain Grant and 2 other members of the human delegation. They had come as witnesses and as protection if needed. Last chance to change your mind, Warren said quietly. Velira shook her head. No. If I hide again, I will never stop hiding. It is time. They walked through the corridors of the station. People stopped and stared. Most had never seen a Crothan with visible scarring before. Whispers followed them. Some species looked shocked. Others looked curious. A few looked sympathetic. The council chamber doors loomed ahead. 2 guards stood on either side. When they saw Velira approaching uncovered, their eyes widened. One of them reached for his communication device. Stand aside, Warren said firmly. Delegate Velira is here to resume the peace negotiations. She cannot enter like that, one guard said. It is against protocols. Which protocol specifically? Captain Grant asked, stepping forward. I've reviewed the council regulations. There's no rule requiring delegates to cover scarring. The guard hesitated. It is Crothan custom. But not council law, Grant said. Now step aside. The guards looked at each other uncertainly. Then, slowly they moved away from the doors. Velira took a deep breath. Then she stepped forward. The doors slid open. The council chamber was a massive circular room with tiered seating arranged in a spiral. Representatives from 20 different species sat in their designated sections. At the center was a raised platform where delegates presented their positions. The moment Velira entered, conversation stopped. Every eye in the chamber turned to look at her. The silence was absolute. Ambassador Doran was standing in the Crothan section. When he saw Velira, his face went pale. Then it flushed with anger. He stood up abruptly. What is the meaning of this? Doran's voice echoed through the chamber. This is an outrage. A violation of every standard of decency. Velira walked slowly to the center platform. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to keep moving. Warren and the human delegation took seats in their section, watching. I am Delegate Velira, she said. Her voice was quiet at first, but it grew stronger with each word. I am here to resume my duties in the peace negotiations. You are impure, Doran said harshly. You have no right to stand before this council uncovered. You bring shame to the Crothan people. No, Velira said, and her voice rang out clearly now. I bring truth. She turned slowly, letting every species in the chamber see her scars clearly. 5 years ago, I was a commander in the Crothan fleet. There was an accident. A reactor breach. I saved my entire crew. 17 lives. But in doing so, I was burned. Scarred. And for that, my people deemed me worthless. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Representatives leaned forward in their seats. I was given a choice, Velira continued. Death or concealment. I chose to hide. For 5 years I have lived wrapped in cloth, speaking through intermediaries, pretending I do not exist. But I am not alone. There are hundreds of us. Thousands perhaps. Crothan who were injured in service to our empire. Soldiers who were wounded in battle. Engineers who were hurt in accidents. Scientists who were exposed to dangerous materials. All of us were cast aside. All of us were told to hide or die. Silence. Doran shouted. You have no authority to speak of these matters. I have every authority, Velira shot back. Because I lived it. Because I nearly died from it. 3 weeks ago, I went to a Crothan doctor with a life-threatening infection. He refused to treat me properly because I was deemed unworthy of resources. He sent me away to die. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several species representatives stood up, calling for order and clarification. The Crothan Empire projects an image of perfection, Velira said, raising her voice above the noise. But it is a lie built on cruelty. We hide our wounded. We erase our survivors. We value appearance over honor, over service, over life itself. And I am done being silent about it. You are exiled. Doran roared. As of this moment you are no longer Crothan. You are nothing. Then I am nothing, Velira said steadily. But at least I am honest. For a moment nothing happened. Then in the Crothan section, a junior delegate stood up. He was young, perhaps newly appointed. His hands went to his neck and slowly he unwrapped the ceremonial cloth he wore. Beneath it, his neck and shoulder bore burned scars. Doran spun around. What are you doing? Sit down immediately. But the young delegate didn't sit. Instead, another Crothan stood. An older female. She removed her wrappings, revealing scarring across her arms. Then another stood. And another. Within minutes, 6 Crothan delegates had removed their concealing cloths. They stood there, scarred and exposed, while the galaxy watched. The chamber had gone completely silent again. The representatives from other species stared in shock and growing horror. Warren watched from the human section, his heart pounding. This was bigger than he had imagined. This wasn't just about Velira anymore. This was about an entire hidden population crying out to be seen. The council chamber remained frozen in stunned silence. 6 Crothan delegates stood with their wrappings removed, their scars visible to all. Ambassador Doran looked between them, his face twisted with fury and something else. Fear perhaps. The council president, a tall insectoid species called a venturi, stood from his elevated seat. This session will come to order, his voice resonated through the chamber. Ambassador Doran, you have made a serious accusation of exile against Delegate Velira. However, what we have just witnessed suggests a matter of much greater concern. I am calling for an immediate inquiry into Crothan treatment of injured citizens. This is an internal cultural matter, Doran said sharply. The council has no authority to interfere in how the Crothan govern themselves. That may be true, said Representative Kilos, a 4-armed species known for their strong stance on individual rights. But the Crothan Empire signed the Galactic Citizenship Accords. Those accords guarantee basic medical care and protection from persecution based on physical characteristics. What Delegate Velira has described sounds like systematic violations of those accords. Other representatives began voicing their agreement. The chamber filled with voices calling for investigation, for accountability, for answers. Warren watched as Doran tried to regain control of the situation. The ambassador was skilled at politics, but he had not been prepared for this. No one had. I move that we suspend all trade negotiations with the Crothan Empire until this matter is investigated, called out Representative Thora, a mammalian species known for their direct approach. If these allegations are true, we cannot in good conscience continue normal relations. Seconded, came voices from multiple sections. Doran's composure finally cracked. You cannot do this. The Crothan Empire is a founding member of this council. We have rights. And so do your scarred citizens, the council president said firmly. This session is adjourned. We will reconvene in 3 days for formal proceedings. Ambassador Doran, I strongly suggest you contact your government and inform them of what has transpired here today. As the chamber began to empty, Velira remained standing on the central platform. Her legs were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Warren quickly moved to her side, taking her arm to steady her. You did it, he said quietly. I do not know what I have done, Velira whispered. I may have just destroyed my entire species standing in the galaxy. No, said a voice behind her. It was the young Crothan delegate who had been the first to remove his wrappings. You freed us. All of us who have been hiding. Thank you. The other Crothan delegates who had revealed themselves gathered around. They were scared, Velira could see it in their eyes. But there was also something else. Relief. Oh, perhaps. What will happen to us now? Asked the older female delegate. Her name was Sorna, and her scarring came from a laboratory accident. I do not know, Velira admitted. But whatever happens, we face it together. No more hiding alone. Within hours, news of the council chamber revelation had spread across the galactic communication networks. Every species heard about what had happened. But more importantly, every Crothan heard about it. On Crothan Prime, the home world, something unexpected began to happen. In the capital city, a former soldier walked into the central plaza. She removed her wrappings. Her body was covered in combat scars. She stood there silently waiting. Within minutes, others joined her. A factory worker with chemical burns. A teacher who had lost an arm in a transport accident and wore a prosthetic. A scientist scarred by radiation exposure. One by one, they removed their concealing garments and stood together. The city authorities tried to disperse them, but more kept coming. Hundreds, then thousands. They filled the plaza and spilled into surrounding streets. They stood there peacefully, silently demanding to be seen. The same scene repeated itself on Crothan colonies across the galaxy. In every major city, the hidden revealed themselves. They did not riot or make demands. They simply existed publicly for the first time in years, in some cases decades. The Crothan government found itself facing an impossible situation. They could not arrest thousands of their own citizens without looking like tyrants to the rest of the galaxy. But acknowledging these people would mean admitting that the Empire's image of perfection was a lie. Warren watched the news feeds from the sanctuary with a mixture of awe and concern. This is bigger than we anticipated, he said to Captain Grant. Revolutions usually are, Grant replied. The question is what happens next. Will the Crothan government crack down or give in? The answer came 3 days later, just before the reconvened council session. The Crothan High Council released an official statement. Warren and Velira watched it together on a view screen in her room. The High Chancellor appeared on the screen, an elderly Crothan with traditional robes. His face was serious. The events of recent days have forced our society to confront uncomfortable truths. After extensive consultation with our governing bodies, the Crothan High Council announces the following reforms effective immediately. Velira leaned forward, hardly breathing. First, all laws regarding physical appearance and citizenship status are hereby repealed. Physical scarring or disfigurement will no longer be grounds for reduced citizenship rights or social standing. Second, full medical care will be provided to all Crothan citizens regardless of their physical condition. No citizen will be denied treatment based on their perceived worthiness. Third, a Truth and Reconciliation Committee will be established to hear testimony from those who were harmed by previous policies and to provide restitution where possible. The Chancellor paused, and for the first time he looked directly into the camera with what might have been genuine emotion. To those we have failed, to those we forced into hiding, to those we told were worthless because they bore the marks of survival, we offer our deepest apologies. The Crothan Empire has prided itself on strength, but we forgot that true strength includes compassion, acceptance, and the courage to acknowledge our mistakes. We begin the work of change today. The transmission ended. Velira sat in stunned silence. Tears streamed down her face, but she made no sound. Warren placed a hand on her shoulder. You did this. You changed an entire civilization. No, Velira said, her voice choked with emotion. We did this. All of us who refused to stay hidden. And you, Dr. Warren, who showed me that my scars did not define my worth. 2 weeks later, the peace negotiations resumed. The council chamber was full once again, but the atmosphere was different now. There was tension certainly, but also a sense of witnessing something historic. Velira stood at the Crothan delegation table. She wore formal diplomatic robes, but her face and arms remained uncovered. Her scars were visible to all. Ambassador Doran was no longer present. He had been recalled to Crothan Prime and replaced by Ambassador Theron, a younger official with a more progressive reputation. Theron had privately apologized to Velira before the session began. The Crothan Empire wishes to resume negotiations, Theron announced to the council. And we wish to do so with honesty and humility. We acknowledge that we have much to learn from the other species of this galaxy. We request that Delegate Velira continue to serve as our lead strategist for these talks. All eyes turned to Velira. She stood slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. I accept this position, she said clearly. On one condition. I will never again cover my scars. They are part of who I am. They are proof of my service and my survival. If the Crothan Empire wishes me to represent them, they must accept me as I am. We do, Theron said without hesitation. And we are honored by your continued service. The negotiations that followed took 3 weeks. They were complex and often difficult. But Velira's strategic mind proved invaluable. She found compromises where others saw only conflict. She built bridges between species that had been on the verge of war. Warren attended some of the sessions as a medical observer. He watched Velira work with quiet pride. She commanded the room with confidence now, no longer hiding or diminishing herself. When she spoke, people listened. On the final day, the peace treaty was ready for signing. All species representatives gathered in the council chamber for the ceremony. Velira stood with the Crothan delegation as Ambassador Theron signed the document. Then, in an unprecedented move, Theron handed the signing stylus to Velira. This peace exists because of your courage, Theron said. You should sign it as well. Velira took the stylus with trembling hands. She added her signature below Theron's. As she did, representatives from every species in the chamber rose to their feet in applause. It started quietly but grew until the entire chamber was filled with the sound. Later that evening, Velira found Warren on one of the station's observation decks. He was watching the stars through the massive windows. Thank you, she said simply. Warren turned to her with a smile. For what? For seeing me when I could not see myself. For reminding me that survival is not shameful. For giving me the courage to stop hiding. You had that courage all along, Warren said. I just helped you remember it. Velira looked down at her scarred hands. For so long she had hidden them, ashamed of what they represented. But now when she looked at them she saw something different. She saw hands that had pulled 17 people from a burning reactor. She saw hands that had negotiated peace between warring species. She saw hands that had refused to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. What will you do now? Warren asked. I have been offered my old military rank back, Velira said. Commander Velira, officially recognized once again. But I have decided to remain in diplomatic service instead. There is much work to be done. Many Crothan are still struggling with these changes. I want to help them adjust to this new reality. That sounds like exactly what you should be doing, Warren said. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Velira thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the darkness of concealment to the light of acceptance. From believing she was worthless to knowing she had value. Dr. Warren, she said quietly. Among the Crothan we have a saying. Roughly translated, it means that the strongest metal is forged in the hottest fire. I used to think that saying was about weapons. But now I understand it differently. How so? Warren asked. Velira held up her scarred hands. These marks are proof that I was tested by fire and did not break. They are not shame. They are honor. And I will wear them proudly for the rest of my life. Warren nodded, his own scars hidden beneath his uniform but no less significant. Then wear them well, Commander. You've earned that right. As they stood there watching the stars, news of the Crothan reforms continued to spread across the galaxy. On distant worlds, other species with their own prejudices and cruelties began to question their own traditions. The Crothan's transformation had started something that would echo through civilizations for generations to come. And it had all begun with one simple act of courage. A woman choosing to be seen rather than hidden. A human doctor choosing to help rather than judge. And the powerful truth that scars are not marks of shame, but badges of survival.